How the heck do you get a story idea out of your head and into a book? Hi, I'm Hannah Sandvig. I write and illustrate cozy fantasy romance novels, and today I'm answering more of your questions about my writing process. This is actually part 2, so if you think this is a fun topic, be sure to go back and listen to part 1. Watch part 1. Both. Do both to part 1. Do you have to watch part 1 before this? I don't think so. I don't know. Probably not, but you'll want to watch it because it's full of fun questions and answers. All of these questions are from my newsletter friends. I sent out a survey about a month ago and asked if anyone had any questions about pretty much anything that you'd like me to cover in a post or a video coming up. And this is from that. So thank you so much to everybody who left me questions and gave me these great ideas to be all nerdy about. I once saw a meme and it was like, it had 2 pictures. And the first picture was this like giant, epic, cool dragon, like breathing fire. And the caption said, "The story in my head." And then there was, the next caption said, "The story when I try and write it down." And it was literally just this heap of loose puzzle pieces. And I think about that a lot. When you're trying to write a story, sometimes it really does feel like all you've got are all these like little pieces and you're not sure how they're connected. And some of them, you might not even have them all. What if some of the puzzle pieces are like under your couch cushions? You should probably check. You might find some loose change too while you're at it. Also, it turns out there's a million different ways you can put those puzzle pieces together, and everybody has their own system or is trying different things out, which is kind of fun, but can be a little frustrating. I think sometimes we wish there was one right way to do things, but that is not how creativity or story works out for most of us. So today I'm going to answer your guys' questions about how I take that really cool idea or the like all the different cool ideas duking it out in my brain, vying for my attention, and turn it into a book that everyone else can actually read. Okay, enjoy! Okay, next question is from, I'm just going off your email here, and it's Faith Lynn. So I don't know if your name is Faith or Lynn or Faith Lynn, but hi, thank you for your question. She said, "I would love to hear about how you generate ideas, both general and specific, just everything then." All right. "And how you stick to just one without it constantly evolving." She says, "When I try my hand at fiction, I either have no ideas or too many variations of the same thing, person, place, everything in the story." All right, so like how do you pick what you want most for this story? Is that the question maybe? How do you generate ideas? You have ideas in your head all the time and you think to yourself, I will die before I have a chance to write all these ideas because I'm a slow writer and my brain is very busy. I guess there's a few ways that I come up with ideas for things in my book. I am a very introverted person, by which I don't necessarily mean that I am shy or that I don't like being around people. I do like quiet time quite a bit though. But also that I feel like I'm a very internal person. Like I spend a lot of time kind of in my own head thinking about things. And I am always thinking about different ideas for stories. So that's part of it. There's always stuff in there. And then I do find also, there's a few things. So I try and keep track and pay attention to things I really like in other stories. I have a list called an IDS list, and I'm gonna make a better post or video about this at some point. But the idea is that it's like a list of things that I really specifically like in stories. They could be micro tropes, they could be visual elements, they could be all sorts of things that I just think are really fun and would like to put in a book sometime. So I have a list of those, and I made a list for this series specifically with things about each season that I really loved. Like for winter, it could be like flavored hot chocolate, or holding hands with someone when you're both wearing mittens. It's so adorable. Or the patterns that frost makes on the windows, right up to like full-on romantic tropes and things like that I like. So if I make a list of them, then I can pull from them when I'm writing my story. So when I generally have that sort of plot already, especially if I'm coming up on a part of the book that I'm not that excited about, I usually look at my IDS list and I think, how can I make this more fun? How can I add things into it to make me really excited to write this chapter? Like if this chapter is lame, then maybe they should be doing an activity that I think is really cute for a couple to do together, like baking a pie. I love they just bake all the time in my books. Or when I wrote a book, in the Glassgate, they go camping. And I was like, how do I make camping magical and whimsical? And the answer was adorable tents that hang in trees and also have lanterns hanging in the trees. And I'm like, that would be amazing. So I try and have things like that to just get me really excited about it. I can feel the light is fading. I'm going to go check and see if I should open those windows. I have direct sunlight today, which I don't like to complain about because it's been a very, very dark January and February, but it does make it tricky to film. So a list like that is something I think that everyone who loves stories should do. Whether you're an author or just somebody who loves to think about what you're reading and why you like it, it's really fun. And then you can compare notes with your other friends and find out if you have the same thing that you're really into, if you're both like really excited that season 2 of Only Murders in the Building had secret passageways in the building, because secret passageways are one of your ids. Obviously, that's one of my ids. Another way I have of coming up with ideas that is not replicable by everyone is that I ask my children things. They are currently 16 in a couple weeks, 14 and 9. And I will go for walks with them and I'll say things like, I have to write a tiny dragon for this series. What would make the tiny dragon extra adorable? And they gave me many opinions on tiny dragons, and if it should be an Asian style dragon or a Western style dragon, and maybe it should eat spicy food so that it breathed out fire. But I was like, I don't think so. I don't think it's a fire breathing dragon. And they're like, maybe it really loves cookies and steals cookies. And I was like, ooh, I do like that idea. And they're like, maybe it looks like this, maybe it's like that. And they give me all these ideas, and it also helps me think. And I think just that talking to somebody who's not a writer, but is really creative is helpful. And that kids often come up with ideas you don't expect. So I think that's really fun. And I still do that with them quite a bit. I've been harassing my middle daughter. She really loves crows specifically, but corvids in general. And I'm writing a crow shifter and a magpie shifter. So I've been having her do some research for me so she can talk to me about all these bird things she likes. And we could talk about how we could incorporate some of those characteristics into the story, what would be funny, and into the characters and their like romance. I was like, tell me everything you know about bird courtship. It's been entertaining. So harass children and teenagers. And if you have too many variations or they keep changing on you, try and write them down so you can keep track of what you're doing. And I don't know, don't feel bad about reusing ideas later, but also remember that you can fit as many fun things as you want into one story, and then you can also reuse some of them later if you want to. I feel like people feel sometimes that ideas are like a resource that you have a certain amount of, but you're always coming up with more, and you can fit a lot of them into something. Just pick the ones that make you most excited or feel like they're gonna do an interesting thing for the plot line. Okay, then I have 3 questions from Zinab. Nice work, these are excellent questions. Number 1, how do you know when you write a scene that's going to fit perfectly? I don't. Like I said, sometimes my intuition kicks in and I'm like, I'm brilliant, I'm perfect, this is amazing. Sometimes I just write the scene and hope for the best, and then that's what the next rounds of edits are for. I'm going to talk about this later, but my first draft and my last draft are not at all the same. I don't usually put anything in that I have to take out. So I think I try to be careful with where I think the plot is going and what I think the characters are doing. But if it doesn't fit perfectly, you just change it later. I do have friends, my friend Valia, who I had on in my last video, and we talked about, we're debating cozy fantasy stuff. She writes random scenes that she's excited about and then like not in order. And then she'll like build a book around them, or like write this scene and then that scene and then that scene, because that's what works for her brain. My brain is too linear for that, I think. Maybe I'll try it someday. But I guess what I'm trying to say there is there's not a right answer. We just figure out what kind of works. Because coming up with stories in our head and then writing them down for other people is a funny job, and you have to figure out how to make it work. How do you keep track of all the tiny plot details? This is still Zainab. I don't do it very good, but I'm getting way better. Oh, man, if I was sponsored, this would be like such a good sponsor segue, but I'm not. With the help of, I use World Anvil, which is a service where you can build out your own, like Wikipedia almost for writing. Well, for world building. A lot of people use it for game RPG stuff, but you can write a bunch of articles and they can all be interconnected. And there's also some cool map features and timeline features. So previous to this, what I used to do was keep it all. I used to write in Scrivener a lot, and I would have some random notes in Scrivener, but I found I had notes in my book and then notes in my world building Scrivener file. And then I had like Google Doc notes, and then I had some notes like written down in a notebook somewhere, and I would forget things. And I completely had continuity issues between my books. I had one character who's a side character in one book and the main character in a different book, and one of my readers was like, she has 2 different last names. And I was like, oh no. I don't have an editing team. Like, I do hire editors, but there's no publisher making sure everything is straight. It is my job. So I have a lot of help now. I don't necessarily, okay, this would be a bad ad. I don't necessarily recommend World Anvil unless you think it looks really fun, because it is not super intuitive to just anybody can use it. You do have to spend some time figuring it out, and some of the little bits of it can be a little frustrating, but I haven't found another system that allowed me to have all the articles that I wanted and interconnect them all with images, all that stuff. And also I can have a map with where you can click all the different spots on the map and the article for that comes up. And then timelines, which in my fairy tale series, it's a portal fantasy. So I have fairy time, which moves faster, and then time in the human realm. So it's like they're parallel, but they're moving at like different speeds, which broke my brain, and I caused continuity errors. So the timeline feature I've been finding really helpful. So I had some readers help me. We went through my books, especially like shout out to Shannon, you have saved my butt. And we've been setting this all up. I don't have it yet published out for my readers. I intend to soon, because it's really fun, and I think that it'll help me keep it updated if I know my readers are looking at it too and not just me. But even having it on the back end has been so helpful, because I've got like this way to keep track of all the little details, and I can check back. So if I'm like, what did I say about so-and-so? What did I say about this magical object? What did I say about this character's backstory? Or even like, what did I say their eye color was? It's all on my World Anvil page. It's in the articles, and if it's in the articles, then it is. That's a fact. That's canon. That's the law. So then I can keep track. So with my new series, I'm planning on putting all the stuff into the World Anvil in a secret location until it's published, of course, spoilers. But that way I can keep track of it all, and I won't have these issues that I had with my last one. My brain, I always think like I'll remember everything, and I remember a lot of things, but I definitely would make something up in 2 spots differently because I would forget I had already made it up before. That's a problem with building a world. Okay, and her third question is, I always find myself expanding the little stuff way too much, to the point where the draft looks like a nonfiction book rather than something fun. This was actually part of the second question, I think. But my solution to that would be write it all down. Write it all down. It just doesn't all have to go in the book, right? So I have a World Anvil page that explains in detail all the laws of my magic system. So I'm like, all the things I've said about my magic and how it works, but you don't actually have to understand how my magic works to understand my book. I just don't want my logic to conflict. I want to make sure that something I said in one book doesn't make something in the next book not true. Like that, you know, it has to be consistent. So I need to know the laws of my magic system, but my readers don't need to know the laws of it unless they want to. And I guess then they can go check out my World Anvil if I ever get it up and running. I'd like to say I will before this video comes out so I could put in the comments, but you can just check back later, and when I do get it, I'll edit the comments and put it in. Oh, soon. It's just, I got a lot going on. But you should know your nonfiction book. Your readers don't have to. You need to put in just enough that they understand what's happening and that it feels real. But you don't know the reasons behind every single thing, even in your world, right? You just know what you need to know to go through your life. So then I would say, oh, this is a question further on. But what you need to do then is make sure that someone else reads your book and knows that it makes sense. And if not, you're like, I didn't put enough of the details into it. I must explain better. And if they do, then you're like, good, because usually we're there reading for the characters and that sort of thing, and the vibes, and not the exact rules of everything. Some people are, but those people probably aren't reading my books. Lena asks, how long are your first drafts compared to the final manuscript? So, there are overwriters and there are underwriters. There might be people, my mother might be able to just write books by now. She's on she's written over 60 contemporary Christian romances. And I think that her first draft is pretty dang close to her final draft. I am not like that, and I would say that most of us aren't. She's just amazing and very experienced by now. But I am an underwriter, so my first drafts are always shorter than my final draft. And I think that is because part of it's that intuitive thing I was talking about. So I'll write through and then I'll figure it out at the end. And sometimes I go, ooh, but this will be even more satisfying if I can set a few more things up. So I'll go back and set those up. Or I'll write something about my characters and be like, oh, this would be more emotionally resonant if I had done some of this stuff before. So I'll put notes as I'm writing. I usually have an entire, right now I write in Google Docs a lot. So I'll have a tab open on the side with just a bunch of notes to put in the next draft. Sometimes then I'll take it and look at it and go, okay, I need to make sure that the readers understand this, and the emotional hook here isn't quite as strong because I need to show this thing. And I'll see how many of those things I can fit in one scene and what that scene can do. If you've read The Frostgate, my Snow White retelling, I needed to do a bunch of things, and I wrote an entire chapter where they play, so Snow White, Neb, and her huntsman, Killian, play board games with the two dwarven kings. And it's really funny, and I got to invent this board game and all the rules for it, but I had to show a bunch of things and convey a few key points of information. So that's why that chapter existed. And I was like, and to make the pacing go the way I wanted it to. Things like you don't want your characters to fall in love too fast, and my characters always just want to fall in love, and I keep having to push them apart until later in the book. So sometimes also inserting some chapters there to slow down that slow burn can help a lot. So the Rose Gate, I think, was 50,000 words first draft, and it was 60 finished. The Glass Gate, did go from about 60 to 75, I think, and the Frostgate went from 70,000 to 99,000, I think. That one had a lot because the Frostgate, even though they're all standalones, that one had a lot of threads that were in the background of other books that I really wanted to wrap up solid to kind of complete it as a trilogy. So it has a lot more stuff, and there's a lot of characters from the other books that keep showing up. I tell them to go mind their own business, and they're like, we want to help. And then they take up more words. But each one's longer than I think it's going to be. So with this current book, I want it to be about 50,000 to 55,000 words in the end. So I'm shooting for about 45. The shorter it is, the less it will expand, I hope, because the less book there is. But I guess we will find out together. Stay tuned. Okay, and the last question on my list of these ones is, how many people do you get feedback from when in the drafting and editing process? What kind of editors do you get? This is a good one, and I think it's interesting to hear from different authors because my author besties all have really different amounts of collaboration that they like compared to me. I am someone who likes a lot of collaborative feedback. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that I am very secure in what story I'm trying to tell, so I don't get easily side-railed by advice that is not good for my book. I think some people worry that they're going to get pulled off track by too many people's opinions, and that's fair because we're all our own people, and some people might get pulled off track by it. I don't. I also think that because I used to be, well, I still am an artist, but back in the day, as a younger artist, back in my day, as my kids like to tease me, I was in a lot of art forums where you post up your art and people would critique it. And I don't know if you were around in the art forum days of the late 90s and early 2000s, but it was a rough place. And you had to get used to some pretty mean feedback, some really helpful feedback, and some very like constructive criticism. So I don't mind it. It doesn't, I mean, I will occasionally be like, but I generally, not to their faces in my head. But in general, if I disagree with them, I just disagree with them and I'm not at all like bothered by it. So I use a lot more feedback than most people do. So how much then? My process has changed a bit because I have a Patreon now. So I used to write my whole first draft and then send it out to some early readers. But now I'm writing for my Patreon and I publish my chapters as I'm drafting to there, which is wild experience. So far I've done 2 kind of short story novelettes that way, and then I rewrote one of my stories and expanded a novella into a full-length novel, and that's what I just finished up. So this is going to be my first full-length novel that I'm writing that way, that like I don't necessarily know a lot about it. So my patrons do have to be willing to put up with things like me writing in the notes, hey, I changed this thing to this thing. So it's not a polished, finished product, but they get to come along with it and give me feedback and ideas and just be excited with me. And for me, that really helps having that accountability. And also I really thrive off of people interacting with the things I make. So I'm more likely to keep writing if people are excited for the next chapter. So it helps me out a lot too. Currently, I get that feedback. That feedback is a little bit different because they're trying to guess what's going to happen. And sometimes they'll be like, this doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, I'm setting a thing up. Don't worry about it. So it's like kind of an interesting thing. And then a lot of my patrons who are in the tiers that get the chapters, because I also have a free tier and a $5 tier, and those ones aren't story tiers. They're just like hanging out and talking about stuff and seeing my art and photos. But the $10 tier that gets the chapters, some of them just want to read it and they don't have any feedback very often, or just aren't feeling chatty. They just are excited to read the chapters early. So it's not necessarily feedback at that stage, but I do get some, and that can be good because they could tell me that something isn't working the way I think it is, and I can kind of adjust. So then when it's all done, I went through, so this is the stage I'm at. I'm hilariously at 2 different stages in this process right now, because I am working on the editing stage of the Wolfgate, and then I'm working on the drafting stage of, we're calling it Misthaven 1, my winter one. Misthaven's the name of the village, and this is book 1. It's Misthaven 1. And so I'm doing 2 of these things at once. So with the Wolfgate, I finished posting it to my Patreon. I then went through all the notes that I had gotten from patrons that, like, on each of like the chapter comments kind of thing, that I thought like were important for me to try and tweak things. And I went through and kind of did just a quick, not like quite a second draft, but I kind of went in and added some things. And like I said before, I usually have an extra document open while I'm writing where I put in notes of stuff I want to change. So I did all of that stuff. And then just yesterday, 2 of you still need to respond to your emails. So if you signed up to be a beta reader, check your spam box. But I got a team of beta readers, and a lot of authors again only use maybe 1 or 2 or swap with another author because they feel like it's too much advice. And maybe again it's the ADHD. Maybe I love having lots of stuff rattling around in my brain. I don't know. I like it. So I set up a Google Doc and I send it out to a couple author friends that I really trust, that we read each other's things, and I send it out to a bunch of my readers, and I try and get readers who have read previous books And also, it's nice if I can have one or two that is their very first book for me, because I want my books, you could pick up any book and read it and not get confused. So I want to know if it's not confusing. And I think I have 12 people on my list right now. I like at least 8. I don't like more than 15. And at this stage as well, if I need specific feedback, because I'm writing from outside my lived experience, I try and pick readers who can help me with that. So the Glassgate, my main character is Japanese Canadian, and in the Frostgate, my male main character is Black. So I wanted to be like, have people from those backgrounds and lived experiences so that they could let me know if there's anything I need to tweak. And I very specifically told everybody else that if you are not from that background, you don't get to give me opinions. Sorry. Because I've never appreciated people telling other people how they should be offended by things. I'm like, they can tell me themselves. Thank you. That's why I'm asking them. It's all good. Anyway, so call it sensitivity readers. So I try and get a couple of those. I don't need them with the Wolfgate. None of us have ever been a cursed wolf shifter, so I don't have anyone who can give me their lived experience on it, sadly. Got about 10. They're going to read through a Google Doc. I also give them a Kindle file in case it's easier. And they comment on the Google Doc in spots that they think things need adjusting. And the reason I like so many people is that different people look for different things. And also, I feel like if one person tells you a joke isn't funny, or if one person tells you that they're confused by something, you don't know if they just don't share your sense of humor, or if they were speed reading late at night like I do sometimes and totally miss something. But if you have 13 people and 8 of them tell you a joke isn't funny, you're like, it's possible that this is a joke that is only funny in my head or to like the other 3 people who know my inside jokes. So for me, it is more useful to have more beta readers rather than fewer. But still, I don't want a ton because I need them to get through it in a timely manner. And after a while, you're just going to get the same repetitive feedback. So after I do that, I input any of their feedback, add any extra scenes. For the Frostgate, I actually had 2 readers go through it again afterwards because I had gotten a lot of feedback about the romance arc feeling off in a spot. So I wanted a couple new people to read it and tell me if it felt good now, who didn't have the expectation. It's hard to read new for the first time when you've read it before. You still remember the old stuff, right? So I needed new readers to go over it. I feel like if you don't do this, it's hard to know what things are on the page and what things are in your head, because you might have written things and deleted them, or you might think you explained something clearly, but you didn't, or at least not clearly enough, right? I often underwrite emotion because I feel like I'm someone who shows emotion often very subtly. So I'll have my characters really subtly undercut sarcasm, something, the emotion. And a lot of readers are like, wasn't she even upset? And I'm like, obviously, all the clues are there. But I really subtly underwrote it. So I have to then go through and show more about how the character is feeling and making sure it comes across really well so the readers connect properly. So that I need readers to tell me this. After that, I send it to my mom, usually, actually, because she is amazing and she does an edit for me and she does check for some of those other issues. Because like I said, she doesn't write fantasy romance, but she does write romance, so she can kind of tell me if some stuff feels off. But mostly she's doing a quick and dirty copy edit for me because she's super good at it. She once after my last book, she called me and she was like, your father says that it will not help if I explain commas to you, but I think that you are a smart girl and maybe it will help. And I was like, Mom, I do mostly understand how to use commas if you ask me, but that doesn't mean I catch them when I'm writing. Between the dictation side of it to the transcription to the way that I kind of scan and speed read, I miss a ton of stuff. So she goes through and catches a whole bunch of things for me. And then I send it to my editor who goes through and catches a whole bunch of things for me. And that's mostly copy edits at this point because the story should be pretty good. I have a great editor for most of my books who will tell me if she thinks my romance beats are a little off as well. But for the most part, by that point, what I really want to know is sentence structure, things like that. So she's looking for typos, but she's also looking for like word echoes, like if you use the same word too many times, or if you start too many sentences with the same word, that sort of thing, kind of repetitive notes that we all do. And I might do more often than some people because I'll move things around and sometimes things will be in two places. So she does all that and she has a nice edit and I'm like, thank you, I love you, I promise I'll try to do better with my commas next time. And then I send it to my ARC readers and my typo hunters at the same time. And the job of the ARC readers is to read the whole book and leave a review somewhere for when it comes out. But I tell them this book has typos in it because it does still. It does. It went through 2 editors. It still has typos. I counted my mom there. And then at the same time, it goes to my typo hunters. And to my typo hunters, and to my ARC readers, I'm like, I have a typo document over here if you want, but it's not your job. You don't have to do it. And to my typo hunters, I say, you can leave reviews over here if you want, but it's not your job and you don't have to do it. But I tell them both, please don't leave me a bad review based on bad typos, because that is why you're here. Just tell me to fix them and then they won't be in the book and you don't have to leave a review about it, because that has happened before. But the typo hunters are a team of as many people as want to sign up. I have had up to 35 to 40 people sign up before, and I give them all the same Google Doc. And like, it's a new one, it's fresh, it's not the beta one. The one that's gotten my editor to go through, and they can go through and either leave comments or do edit suggestions. They can't change anything in the document. And why do I like to have so many? 2 reasons. 1, everybody catches different things, and I feel like you can never have too many of that. And 2, I don't trust all of them. I love you guys if you're there. But I don't always trust everybody who isn't an editor to have a perfect edit or to be following the same style guide as my editor did. So I have 1 or 2 that will go through and be like, someone will be like, comma here, and someone else will be like, not a comma, and like give like a whole reason why, and I'm like, I'm going with that one. I input any things that are typos, and then if there's a few, it's always the commas. I'm like, I'm sorry, Mom, I do my best. But sometimes I'm like, I don't know. And I have actually previously paid my editor to go through one more time and accept or reject all the comma suggestions for me. By the time we've done all of that, my book's pretty good. I used to get a lot of comments about my poor editing and typos in the Rosegate, my first book, and I don't think I got a single one for the Frostgate. So all that to say is that it is a team effort and that my readers help me so much, and I am so grateful. And I think it's great for you guys too, you who help me, because I think there's nothing worse than reading a book and like, I think there's nothing worse than reading a book and kind of wanting to yell at the author. You're like, this character would never do that. Or like, you used that word 4 times. Or don't you know how to spell the character's name? You're the one who made it up. And so on. And when they help me, they get to do that when I will still change it. And then it will be good. And then the problem is not there. So that is the last of my questions on drafting and plotting. And it is, I think I talked for longer than I meant to. Good thing I had my tea. Keep my throat okay. But I have some more ones coming up. I have a lot of questions about world building and map making and how I put my illustrations in my book and all that. So I'm going to write you more later. And I hear more of my children. Children! I hope that was helpful for you guys. Like I said before, there's a million ways to do things, and I think sometimes you just have to experiment with a bunch of stuff and figure out what works. Because as I said, I had to experiment a bunch and try a bunch of things that didn't work and find some things that worked one day and then did not work the next day, and that is the joy and pain of the creative process. If you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will hit the like button and maybe subscribe and stick around. I have more content planned on cozy stories and showing my new book as I'm working through it. I like to share the art that I'm working on, as well as the characters and story ideas I'm coming up with for my next books, and also just other cozy fantasy stories that I enjoy. I like nerding out about that stuff with you guys, and just hang out, have some whimsical fun. Before I go, I also want to acknowledge that sometimes it almost feels like we shouldn't just allow ourselves to be happy and have fun. I know there's a lot of things happening in the world right now that can be pretty rough. I personally am in Canada where some of the things feel far away, but we have had some things happen real close to home recently that have shaken me, and it is something that I remind my children of, and I just want to remind you before you leave that it is okay and good to look for the glimmers of beauty and hope and magic in the world every day. That it doesn't mean we don't care, and it doesn't mean that we don't let things affect us. But I think that we're created to feel joy and happiness, and we were given this beautiful world and the people in your life who love you, and that is how we maintain our strength and how we can do good in the world and help others. So, and that was like nothing to do with what I was saying before, but it's on my heart, and I just wanted to throw that out there to maybe try and look for something this week that brings you a little joy and a little happiness, and remember that it's okay to take time to read your favorite comfort read and enjoy a delicious hot beverage and just take a moment of peace for yourself. Okay, well, on that note, I love you all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful week and look for something beautiful and bright out there in the world. Bye. Do you ever record a whole 5 minutes of video and then realize that actually all you did was take a picture of your shoulder as you were going to sit down because you hit the wrong button? Or is that just me?